today to demonstrate how you can leverage Label Studio and spaCy to create an annotated data set, and also at the same time quickly train and iterate on a natural language processing model for your applications. So if you're not familiar, Label Studio is an open source annotation tool that allows you to quickly annotate documents, and spaCy is a Python library for natural language processing. So let's get into it. First, you want to install Label Studio. First, actually, let's clone this project. So we'll copy paste that, clone. CD into it. We'll install Label Studio. And while that's running, we'll also get our data for annotation. So I'm just going to use one of the spaCy example projects tutorial, the food ingredients one, assets. So I'll just download the sample data. Download. Save it to my downloads. And we'll also need to install spaCy. So if you go to the spaCy website, get started, and go to the installation page, you can choose settings that apply to you, where you want to train models. And that'll do. So I'll just copy paste this and install spaCy. So I also quickly created a conversion script. So that sample data is JSON lines format, whereas Label Studio doesn't support that. It's expecting a JSON file with this format here. So we'll quickly do that. Convert, downloads, read it. Samples like this. So if we have a look at our samples, you can see that each item in this JSON array has a data field and a text field. And this is the text we'll be using for our annotations. So Label Studio is installed. So in this backend project, there's a requirements file. And we'll install those. Correct. And if you follow the usage steps here, we first have to initialize our backend. And we'll call it food backend. So we'll be using a spaCy NUR component, which is the named entity recognizer. So we'll enter that. And we'll also start Label Studio by running the label-studio command. So I've already got a couple projects here, we can just ignore those. And we'll create a new one called food demo. We'll import our sample data. And we'll set up our labeling. So we want named entity recognition for this one. So we'll get rid of those labels, and we'll do that for ingredients. Save. So now we have our samples loaded, and if we go into settings and machine learning, we can add our backend that we just created. So here we can see, congratulations, your backend is successfully initialized, and you can start it by doing that. But before we can start it, we need to create a spaCy config file for our pipeline. And to do that, we can use the quick start. So in the spaCy usage documentation, if you go down to training models, scroll down a bit, there's a quick start widget, and you can quickly select name entity recognition and then accuracy, and we'll copy that. Paste it in. We'll make some tweaks. No, we won't make some tweaks, that's good. And then you run this spaCy fill config command. So now we can move that config file that was generated into our backend folder, and backend folder contains a model hyphen file, and you can tweak some of the settings in this constant section. So for our training evaluation data split, I'm going to use 20%. If I was going to use a GPU, then I can change the GPU IDs here, and that's everything done here. So now we can run that start command. So label studio-ml start food ner backend. So that spits out a URL you can use. I was going to change port numbers. That spits out URL you can use in the label studio settings. I was going to use localhost 5095. It's going to call it spaCy, validate and save, connected. Cool, so now our environment's all set up, and now we can start labeling tasks. So we just hit label tasks, and label our text. So I'm going to do about 100 documents, and then it'll come back and train our first model. And to annotate, we just select a label, double click words. So I've got over 100 annotated documents now. So I'm going to train my first model. And to do that, I'll go into settings, machine learning, and hit start training. So we go back to our console. Yeah. So we get this message that the vectors are missing. We need to download this package. So spaCy download this. That will download. And once the vector package is downloaded, we'll restart our backend. And then we'll hit start training again. And here we go. It's going to start training. and once it's started training, once it's finished training, it will start using it for annotation predictions. But in the meantime, I'm just going to annotate some more recipes. So our first model has been trained. As we can see, the spaCy's output is outputted saved pipeline to output directory. One thing I did forget to mention is when you add your machine learning model, I'd recommend turning webhooks off and just using the start training button. So now that we've got a model trained, as we can see, predictions are starting to appear in our labeling tasks. And now it's just a matter of correcting them and then adding any words or spans that it's missed. And beef stroganoff is not an ingredient, so I'm just going to remove beef. And it's starting to pick up ingredients reasonably well. There's onions. So after you've trained, after you've annotated a bit more documents, then you can just go into settings again and train another model and start iterating on your model, slowly improving it. And if we look in our backend folder, you can see that there's this latest model symlink, and that is a model that you can use with spaCy to use in your applications. So that gives you a basic idea of how you can use Label Studio and spaCy to train models.